My name is Amy McInnes. This is The Art of Plenty. And today, we are talking about small tweaks. We are diving into the idea that you can have big change through small, incremental steps. Little things can have a big result if they're done with consistency. And I got to let you know, this episode is going to be a little bit shorter than my typical episodes because we're talking about small things, and we're going to keep this episode short because of that. There's a connection to me because I think that there is opportunity for big impact, and even though there is a lot to unpack, we can do that in a small amount of time because good things can happen in small bits. The smallest change can have the biggest impact. Not everything needs an overhaul to make it work or to make it good. I do not know if you are familiar with Atomic Habits by James Clear or Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg. Not a lot. There are many parts of Atomic Habits that come out of the research that Fogg did and is written about in Tiny Habits. I like both books because they both talk about this concept that you can change your life, and you can change your life by doing small things often. You can change your relationship. You can change your work. You can change your perspective. You can change your health. And it doesn't have to be this big thing. It can just be little things that are done consistently. Small tweaks are like a magic wand. They can completely change what is going on for you, but it's not instant. And that's the part that's hard. Because it's so small, because the action is so minute, it can feel like it doesn't have impact. And that can be very difficult to maintain consistency because you can't necessarily see the impact because you don't feel like you're doing anything big. But it adds up. I think toothbrushing is probably the most basic example that everybody does. Well, I hope everybody does. My kids, I wouldn't say that they're the best, most consistent teeth brushers, especially not twice a day. They're like, well, why? I already brushed them once. No, buddy, twice a day. But teeth brushing is a very small act. It's 2 minutes a day, but when you do it consistently, you maintain your oral hygiene. This is the type of thing that I'm talking about when I say small things. And you can change your life through small tweaks. It adds up. Here is an example of a little small thing that can have a big impact, but not necessarily in a good way. I don't know if I'm talking to any quilters out there or people that sew, but if you change your seam allowance even just a little bit when you're putting something together, or you don't check your cutting and your cutting's not accurate, or when you sew just a hair off the line, the seam allowance line, just a little bit. When you go to put everything together, your border might not fit, or things might not come together, because those little small things make a difference when everything comes together, and the precision in quilting matters. We had a house that we lived in, and I don't know what happened, but the framing on this one part of the wall was so bizarre, and it was kind of like this spot where things jut out. And you didn't really notice how bad the framing of that portion of the house was until the trim was on it and the floor. But you could see that by the time we got to putting the trim on, you could see the impact of the framing, because as every piece got added on afterwards from the framing, when you got to the drywall and the tape and the paint, when it was all together, that's when you could really see that the framing was off. And with every second step of the construction process, it got more and more off. And it was so obvious when you saw the trim and the floor come together that the house in that part of it wasn't square. And I don't know a lot about framing, so I don't know if that was indicative to show that the whole house, the framing was off, or if it was just that portion, because I don't necessarily understand how that comes together. But I do know this, that those small things that require precision, when we don't have them, it adds up and it can make things not work out on the big part of things. And the reverse of that is also true. When we have small things that we do consistently, the result can have big impact in our life. When I was a kid, my mom never made me keep my room clean. She let that be my own space. So however I wanted to maintain it, it was my choice. But every once in a while, she'd say, you need to clean your room. I'm still messy. But I remember those times when she would tell me that I needed to clean my room. It was a full overhaul. I never just picked up one or two things off the floor. I would rip everything out of my drawers. I would pull everything out of my closet. I would take everything off of my shelves, reorganize it, and put it back together. I would go for the complete overhaul. And to this day, I still feel that way about things. Like, oh, I just want to just revamp this entire system. Then I'll feel better about it. Or I want to pull apart the whole pantry and reorganize it, and then I'll feel better. But we don't always have time to do an overhaul. We don't always have the resources to do an overhaul, and we don't always need to do an overhaul. Sometimes we just need to do a little tweak. And if we can tweak the small things over time, consistently make those changes, we can have a big impact in our lives. Did you know that, and I'm not very good at physics. I took physics when I was in high school, but I wasn't very good at it. It was my worst science. It was physics. But there is a certain degree that is optimal for sending a projectile through space so that it goes the farthest distance. And that angle is 45 degrees. That is the ideal. Now, if you shift just a little bit to 44 degrees or 46 degrees, you impact the distance that projectile can grow. It's that small. And obviously, the further you get away, the more it impacts the distance. But it's very specific, and a small change to correct it can impact how far things go. Today is all about thinking about what it is that you can shift in your life just a little bit. Is there an area in your life that you can shift, that you can make a small tweak? And if you are consistent with that, you will have significant change over time. Is there something you can do? Is there a part of your life that you wish was different, that you don't feel satisfied about? And if that's the case, what is it that you can shift? You have to be able to identify where the problem is or where you want things to be better. And once you've identified that, then the next step is to identify what it is that you can tweak. I want to tell you about a time that was really difficult in my life. I was at home with a couple kids. I think I had 2 at that point, maybe 3. And I was home a lot because I either wasn't working out of the house at that point or I was working very minimal hours. I can't quite remember because honestly, that time when most of my babies were little is foggy in my brain. It's hard to separate the years when I was pregnant for that long and breastfeeding and just in the thick of babies. And I remember feeling really negative. And I'm not necessarily the most optimistic person, but this was a particularly difficult time. I was just naggy and kind of grumpy, and I complained a lot about things. And consequently, that made me a very difficult person to be around because I wasn't able to be joyful. And I don't know if it was because I was tired or because I wasn't working as much, because I get a lot of joy out of working and being able to do things for myself, or if it was because I wasn't getting enough alone time. None of that really matters for what was causing the situation, because ultimately I'm the one that's in control of my emotions and how I choose to act and how I choose to talk. But it wasn't a good time for me. I was not in a good headspace, and the consequences of being a negative person was really impacting my relationship with my husband, which wasn't good, and it just kept getting worse and worse. I'm sure you've been around people like that who don't ever really have anything positive to say and seem to suck the joy out of everything. And this should have been a happy time for me. I mean, I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to have kids. I wanted to be a mom and be able to spend time with my babies. It's so funny, hey, how the things that we want to do, how we sometimes don't like them when we're doing them. How there's parts of those things that we want to do that eat away at us and make it difficult. But this is what I did in that time. I decided that I couldn't go on. My husband told me that I needed to change. And I decided that every day I was going to notice 3 things that happened that were really good. And I thought if I could just focus on 3 positive things, everything would shift, because I didn't know what else to do. And I couldn't do a big overhaul on my life. So I had to do something small. And that was something I could do. I could find 3 positive things that happened during the day. And I would write them down. And they were not big, significant things. They were things like trying to even remember, because they were so simple that they weren't those standout moments that change your life. They were little things. Things such as my daughter picked up her toys, or my son gave me a hug and said he loved me. I'm talking small things that I chose to notice. And it didn't happen right away. I was still feeling pretty negative. But I only needed to do that for about 2 months. And then I was out of that headspace. It absolutely shifted my entire life. And it was easy to do because it was small. I just had to stay consistent. Because success begets success. And when you start small and you maintain those small things, the impact can be huge. I want to encourage you today to think, is there something you can do? Could you think one nice thought about your partner? If they've been driving you crazy and your relationship is on the rocks, can you think of just one nice thing about them every day? Could you think of something that you're grateful for? What's a small tweak? What about having a glass of water when you start your day? Is that something that is going to lead you in the direction that you're wanting to go? If your goal right now is to drink more water, what is it? What's the big change that you need to see happen in your life that would really make a difference for you? If you can figure out that big change, that big thing that you are after, then break it down to one teeny tiny step and start with that. These small steps are the things that enable us to live the life that we were meant to live. And it's hard. It is hard becoming the person that you were meant to be. So let's start small. Let's start today and take one teeny tiny step. Make one small tweak. I would love to hear your comment of what you're going to do. As I've said before, it is so great to hear what other people are doing, because when you tell me what you're doing, I get inspired and it gives me creative ideas for what I can do in my life. When we all are in this road together, when we're all on this journey together, we all bring each other up. We all elevate each other. So please share with me what you're doing. Share with your friend what you're doing, because when you talk about what you're doing in your life, it's an inspiration to others, and then others want to make a change, and then they do things. And that's how we all get better. That's how we all get into the position and into the places that we were meant to be, doing the things that we were meant for. This podcast was created for entertainment purposes only. It's not meant to be professional help. If you need professional help, please reach out to someone in your home community that is certified, educated, and able to help you if you need it. I am so honored. I'm so honored that you would listen today, and I'm so excited that you're making changes to your life so you can be who you're meant to be. Please share with us, with others, if this podcast is speaking to you, ministering to you, encouraging you. I would love to hear about it. I would love to hear about the difference it is making in your life. This is The Art of Plenty. I'm Amy McInnes. Thank you. Thank you for joining me.